Hello everyone, we're now on our part 2 on discussing rational function, and this time we will be solving rational inequalities. No? Solving rational inequalities naman tayo. It's a continuation of our lesson in the previous video about solving rational equation. So remember that in rational inequalities, you will see the inequality symbol greater than, less than, greater than or equal, or less than or equal to. Now, what are the steps in solving rational inequalities? Number 1, you have to write the inequality as 1 quotient on the left and 0 on the right. So if there are values on the right, you put it on the left side of the inequality and you have to express them as 1 quotient. No? After that, you set the numerator and denominator equal to 0. So isosolve natin sila separately equal to 0. So these values are called the critical points. The critical points on step 3 will be used to divide the number line into intervals. So we will draw the number line and then we will put these critical values as a division of the number line into intervals. And then after you have drawn the number line, we have to test each critical point value. So isosolve natin yung critical point value na yun na nakuha natin sa step 2 if they will be the solution on our inequality in step 1. And then after that, malalaman natin if they will be shaded on the number line or not. After that, nung mga points na yun, yung mga interval naman, yung mga values in between sa ating mga critical points. Isosolve naman natin yun, and if using equation number 1 ulit or inequality number 1 ulit, and then if they made the inequality true or correct, we will shade them. And then after that, we will write these values from the number line. We will write them in an interval notation. So what am I saying? So it's better to see an example. Let's solve for x given 3 over x minus 2 is less than or equal to negative 1. So our first step is to write the inequality as 1 quotient on the left and 0 on the right. So ibig sabihin, si negative 1, we have to put it on the left. So we'll now have 3 over x minus 2 plus 1 less than or equal to 0. Tapos ang sabi dyan, we have to write them as 1 quotient. So since whole number naman yung laging nasa right side natin, magiging whole number din yan sa left, I will teach you a technique. So ang gagawin nyo lang, you will transform these. So 3 plus 1 yung nasa gilid, tapos i-multiply nyo yung denominator na x minus 2. And then rewrite it as x minus 2. So yun lang ang makakuturo ko sa inyong technique kapag ganito yung case. So mas madali kasi siya. So simply, pwede naman natin nang tanggalin yung 1 na yan. No? So, we were now able to write the inequality into 1 quotient on the left side and 0 on the right side. So step 2, we're now on the step 2, we set the numerator and denominator equal to 1. So the numerator is, pwede natin yan i-simplify pa, no? So dito na natin siya i-simplify. Plus x minus 2, yan ay actually, sige, simplify muna natin yung unang given natin. Ito ay magiging, ano na ito? 3 minus 2, so 1. So we will now have x minus 1 over x minus 2 less than or equal to 0. Rather, x plus 1. Okay. So step number 2, set the numerator and denominator equal to 0. So dumun tayo sa numerator, x plus 1 equals 0. So we have x equals negative 1. And then the second one is x minus 2 equals 0, so we have x equals positive 2. So we now have two values, no? X minus 1 and x equals 2. So we will use these critical points to divide the number line into intervals. So we will plot them on the number line. So we have negative 1 and 2, so pwede na natin gamitin yung 0 sa gitna, negative 1 dito, so negative 2 dyan, and then we have positive 1, positive 2, positive 3. So, ito yung ating dalawang point, positive 2 and negative 1. Okay, so we have drawn already an number line. Test each critical point value if each of it is a solution to the inequality by substituting each value to the inequality in step 1. So, ito yung magiging basis na natin ngayon. No? So, isa-substitute daw natin isa-isa yung mga point value na nakuha natin. So, for x equals negative 1, we'll have negative 1 plus 1 over negative 1 minus 2 less than or equal to 0. So, this will be 0 over negative 3, which is actually 0. No? So, this one is a solution. So, negative 1 is a solution. So, we shade that in our number line. For x equals 2, we'll have 2 plus 1 over 2 minus 2 less than or equal to 0. So, nakita nyo, unknown siya. So, extraneous ulit. No? Kapag ka 0 yung denominator, extraneous siya. So, that one is not a solution. So, stay lang natin siya as a hollow dot. Pero yun pa rin yung magsasabi ng ating mga intervals. Now, nakapag-test na tayo ng critical value. Step 5 na tayo. Test which interval is a solution to the inequality by choosing a value and substitute it into the inequality from step 1. So, dun sa point kasi natin, we created 3 intervals. 1, 2, 3. So, that is from 2 up. And then, negative 1 to 2, that's our second interval. And then, the third interval is negative 1 up to negative infinity. So, i-check down natin yan by choosing a value. Siyempre, pipiliin natin yung maliliit. So, we can choose from the first interval, we can choose x equals negative 2. Since yun na yung pinakamababa, kasi magsasubstitute tayo eh. And then, for the other one, we choose x equals 0. Mas madali kapag maliit lang na value. And x equals 3. So, substitute natin sila isa-isa. Negative 2 plus 1, doon ulit sa equation natin dito, over negative 2 minus 2 less than or equal to 0. So, negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1 over negative 4. Which is actually, anong ibig sabihin nito? 1/4 is 1/4 less than or equal to 0. So, this is false, no? So, we will not shade that area. No, hindi siya sagot. Hindi siya solution. We go now for x equals 0. So, 0 plus 1 over 0 minus 2 is less than or equal to 0. So, we have positive 1 over negative 2 less than or equal to 0. That's negative 1/2. Is negative 1/2 less than or equal to 0? This is true. So, we're going to shade this interval dahil dito nang galing si 0. No, yung chinek natin na 0, dito siya sa second one. We shade it. Now, for 3, x equals 3. So, 3 plus 1 over 3 minus 2 less than or equal to 0. So, it's 4 over 1 less than or equal to 0. Is 4 less than or equal to 0? False. No? Greater than siya. So, hindi rin to solution. So, yun lang ang isa-shade natin. Now, we're done. So, to have our step 6 solutions in interval notation, so napapansin natin, we use the 2 points, etong points natin. So, we are saying that negative 1 is included. So, we start with negative 1, together with negative 1, up to positive 2, pero 2 is not included. So, this is what you call interval notation. No. So, this is just the same as x is greater than or equal to negative 1 but less than 2. So, yun yung ibig sabihin niya. So, dito kasi hindi kasama si 2 dahil nga nakapatunayan natin na extraneous siya kanina dito. So, hindi siya kasama. Only values less than that up to negative, down to negative 1. So, this is our final answer. So, see? Ang dami. Medyo magulo-gulo yung solution natin. No? Ulitin natin. So, ulitin natin ang ating mga naging steps. Ang step 1 natin ay we start with writing the inequality in one quotient. So, ito yung part na yon. Step 1. Step 2, set the numerator and denominator equal to 0 and the values are called the critical points. Ito ang ating step 2. After that, use the critical points to divide the number line into 3 interval. Ito yung step 3 natin. Yung nag-plot tayo ng dalawang point. Step 4, test each critical point value. If it is a solution, so ayan, chinek natin siya dito. X equals 1, negative 1, x equals 2. So this one is a solution. This one is extraneous. Ito yung step number 4 natin. So, tsaka natin siya hinalo dito. Step 5 is we get the values into interval. Ito siya. And then, we solve for it. And then, step 6 is we write the solution interval equation. So, I hope you get to see this one clearly. No? I-screenshot nyo na lang, tapos i-follow nyo yung mga procedure. Let's go na to our second example. We try to be more organized this time. Solve for x for 3x plus 1 over x minus 1 greater than or equal to 2. First step is to write the equation. Palitan lang natin yung color. First one, para mas okay yung blue. So first one, we write the inequality as 1 quotient on the left and 0 on the right side. So we will insert again positive 2 onto the left. So this will become minus 2. So we'll now have 3x plus 1 over x minus 1 minus 2 greater than or equal to 0. Tapos yung technique na tinuro ko sa inyo kanina to transform this one na mas madali. So 3x minus 1, 3x plus 1 minus 2 multiplied by the denominator x minus 1. Yan yung tinuro ko sa inyo yung technique kanina. This one is greater than or equal to 0. So to simplify that, this will become negative 2x and negative and positive 2. So, negative 2x tsaka 3x. Gagawin natin yan dito. So, gagawin natin siya dito. Ano na to? 3x plus 1 minus 2x plus 2 all over x minus 1 is greater than or equal to 0. And then, we can now have simplified it x plus 3 over x minus 1 greater than or equal to 0. So that is our step number 1. This is our step number 1. We now have the inequality. For step number 2, we set the numerator and denominator equal to 0. So we have x plus 3 equals 0, so x equals negative 3. And then the other one is x minus 1 equals 0, x equals positive 1. So these 2 points, so ito yung step number 2 natin. Step number 2. Step number 2 natin. So step number 3, we're going to draw now the number line. So we have negative 3 here, and we have here, lagyan natin ng konting space. Lagyan natin siya ng konting space. So we have here negative 3, and we have here the positive 1. So alam naman natin kung paano mag-arrange ng values, no? So halo muna, kasi ita-test point natin yan. So that is our step number 3. Okay, step number 4. Test each critical point value. So, iti-test natin yung mga critical point value na yan. So, we solve for x equals negative 3. Simulan natin sa x equals negative 3. So, substitute natin siya dun sa equation step number 1. So, negative 3 plus 3 over negative 3 minus 1, is it greater than or equal to 0? So, this one is 0. Over negative 4 greater than or equal to 0. So that is 0 greater than or equal to 0. This is true. So we shade now negative 3. Next, for x equals 1. So 1 plus 3 over 1 minus 1 greater than or equal to 0. You see this one is 0. No, extraneous. Ulit. So we will not shade it. Okay? So that is our step number 4. So, step number 4 natin, nagkaroon na ng shade yung ating mga critical values if they are solution or not. Next, step number 5. Test each interval. Test which interval is a solution to the inequality by choosing a value. So, meron ulit tayong tatlong interval. Dito, dito, and dito. So, negative 3 down. So, we choose x equals negative 4. Test muna natin yung part na yan. X equals negative 4. So we use equation number 1, negative 4 plus 3 over negative 4 minus 1 greater than or equal to 0. Negative 1 over negative 5 is greater than or equal to 0. And that is actually positive 1 over 5 greater than or equal to 0. So that is true. No? Positive value na 1/5 ay greater than 0. So true. So if this is true, we shade that area that we tested. So we go na to the middle part. Dito naman tayo sa interval na to. Negative 3 to 1, may 0 dyan. So we use the 0 na lang. So substitute ulit natin. 0 plus 3 over 0 minus 1 is greater than or equal to 0. This is positive 3 over negative 1 greater than or equal to 0. This is negative 3. So this is false. So we will not shade that side. So x yan. So the next interval, ito naman, negative 1 up. So we can use positive 2. So x equals positive 2. We have 2 plus 3 over 2 minus 1 greater than or equal to 0. So we'll have 5 over 1 greater than or equal to 0, where 5 is actually greater than or equal to 0. So that makes the statement true na si 5 daw ay greater than 0. That's true. So yeah. So the values that we obtain is from negative 3. So dahil lower siya, tapapunta siya dito. This is negative infinity. And this one is the positive infinity. So we start with negative infinity. I-read na natin para makita natin yung final answer. So from negative infinity, yan, parenthesis tayo dyan, up to negative 3. Dahil yung negative 3 natin ay shaded, yan. So we use the bracket. We unite it or union with positive 1, so parenthesis lang kasi not included, up to positive infinity. Yeah. So this is now our solution for this rational inequality. Right? I hope may naintindihan kayo sa example number 2 natin. So we make sure na sa step 5 natin, ginawa natin siya. Nag-test tayo, ito, saka ito. It's our step 5. Then our step 6 is our final answer. Okay? So next, for the last example, solve for x for 2 times x minus 1 all over x. So pwede naman natin less than negative 4. So una natin gagawin dyan ay we will substitute na natin itong 2x, itong 2. So we have 2x minus 2 over x plus 4 less than or equal to 0. And then we thought na mas madali ito pagka pinalas natin siya. 2x minus 2 plus 4 times x, yung denominator, all over x less than or equal to 0. That 4x can be added to 2x. That will make 6x minus 2 over x. Sorry, walang walang equal. Sorry. I can't see the tools. Let's remove the equals. Less than 0. Alright. That's our first step. So we have done with the first step. Second, we set the numerator 6x minus 2 equal to 0. That's actually 6x equals positive 2. So divide by 6. So x is equal to 1/3. In the denominator, set it to 0. So yun na siya. 0 na siya. Hindi na tayo magsusolve. So these two will be our guide for the number line. So we draw now the number line. So we have here the 0 and we have here the 1/3 before it isi natin. So we now have here the 0 and this is our 1 and this is our 1/3. Yan. So ito yung dalawang value natin. Medyo maliit na yung magiging value natin. Yan. So we're done with the second. Use the critical point to divide the number line into intervals. We're done. 0 and 1/3 and 1 we have here negative 1. Test each critical value point. So check natin yung x equals 1/3 yung sa ating equation na dito. So 6 times 1/3 minus 2 all over 1/3 less than 0. Ito kasi 2 na 2 eh. So 2 minus 2 is 0 over 1/3 less than 0. 0 na siya, no? Kasi 0 is less than 0. This one is false, no? So we will not shade that x equals 1/3. We will not shade this one. And then we now proceed with x equals 0. So 6 times 0 minus 2 over 0 is less than 0. Nag-0 to extraneous ulit yan. So dahil extraneous yan, hindi natin din isa-shade si 1/3. So wala tayong shaded dyan. So we will not use bracket on our final answer kasi walang included sa ating points. Let's now go to step number 5, test of interval. So we have 3 intervals ulit. So we go with -1. Check natin si x equals -1. So we have 6 times -1 minus 2 over -1 less than 0. That is -6 minus 2 over -1 less than 0. -8 over -1 less than 0. This is +8 less than 0, which is false. No, hindi naman mababa si 8 sa 0. So we will not use this one. So dito sa 0 and 1/3, we can use 1/4. Magdadagdag lang tayo ng 1 dun sa denominator. That seems to be lower than 1/3. So x equals 1/4. 6 times 1/4 minus 2 over 1/4 less than 0. So nakita natin to. 6 over 4 minus 2, yung ating 2 ay 8 over 4 na siya in fraction over 1/4 less than 0. So ano na to? Negative 2/4 or negative 1/2. So we have here negative 2, 6 minus 8 is negative 2/4. Yan. We can follow this, ha, dito na lang tayo. Yan. So negative 2/4. Tapos yung 1/6 natin multiply to 6 over 1 less than 0. So that's 12 over 4, negative 12 over 4 less than 0. That is actually negative 3 less than 0, which is true. So we will shade now the part where 1/4 belongs to as our triad. And then we try 1 for x equals 1. Gamit tayo ng another slide. X equals 1. Ang ating equation for this is 6x minus 2, no? Over x less than 0. So we solve for x equals 1. So we have 6 times 1 minus 2 over 1 less than 0. So we have 6 minus 2, that's 4 less than 0. This is false. So if you observe, hindi natin siya i-shade. Hindi na natin i-shade tong part na to kasi hindi siya solution. So, you see, from 0 up to 1/3, from 0 up to 1/3, dahil wala namang lumabas na true sa ating test point sa step number 4, we will just use parentheses. And that will be our final answer for this given. Yeah. Okay, so that's the values of x for this given. So, I hope naintindihan, no, yung ating steps. So, kailangan lang ulit i-practice, and then after practicing them, try to do some exercise and activity. If you have questions, we will have that during our dependent activity on our face-to-face class. So, see you again for the next discussion. No, rational function naman tayo. So, for this week, ito muna. Okay? Bye! See you again!